The universe didn't scream when he died. It simply shuddered, like a candle flickering in a sudden gale. Voragor, sovereign of the void, the entity who had devoured stars and plunged entire galaxies into eternal silence, now drifted aimlessly, his spiritual essence shattered by the spears of light of the Seven Seraphim. There was no pain, only a cold, stony fury settling into what was left of his consciousness. The children of Radiance, those arrogant deities who proclaimed themselves guardians of order, had achieved the impossible, trapping infinite darkness inside a finite prison. Voragor watched as his cosmic body, a nebula of terror and power, dissolved into particles of stardust. This is not the end, he thought, his will rumbling through the ether as the darkness closed in around him. Light casts shadows, and as long as a single shadow exists, I will return. And then absolute silence swallowed him whole. The sensation of return was far from glorious. There were no trumpets, no thunder of colliding worlds. Instead, there was a suffocating pressure, wet and viscous, followed by a sudden, aggressive cold that lashed at his skin. Voragor tried to roar, to summon the ebony storm to disintegrate anyone daring to disturb his rest. But the decree of a god did not leave his throat. Instead, out came a shrill, pathetic, tearful shriek. Air rushed into tiny, virgin lungs, burning like acid. He opened his eyes, expecting the void of space, but found himself met with the giant, sweaty face of a human woman staring at him with a mix of exhaustion and stupid adoration. "It's a boy, my lord," said an unknown voice, trembling with reverence. "Look at those eyes. They're gray, like the storm before dawn," the woman replied, cradling him against her chest. The creature's body heat was repugnant to someone accustomed to the absolute zero of the abyss. Voragor tried to move, to unleash a telekinetic shockwave to blast these insignificant mortals away, but his limbs were useless, limp and uncoordinated. Realization struck with a horror that froze his immortal soul. He had been reborn. The Seraphim hadn't annihilated him. They had condemned him to something worse. They had incarnated him into the most fragile, dependent life form in the cosmos, a human baby. The indignation was so great that Voragor, now reduced to a mass of vulnerable pink flesh, began to cry harder, not out of sadness, but out of pure, unadulterated rage. Days passed, turning into weeks of psychological torture. His name, as repeated incessantly by the giants who fed and cleaned him, was Elian of House Vane. Apparently, he had the misfortune of being born into a family of custodians, a caste of elite warriors dedicated to the service of the sanctum of light. His father, Marcus Vane, was an imposing man, a mountain of muscle and scars who smelled of steel and dried blood. His mother, Elena, was a high-ranking healer whose luminous aura nauseated Elian every time she used her magic to soothe his colic. Life as an infant was a constant humiliation. The sovereign of the void, who once made empires tremble with a mere gesture, now couldn't even hold up his own head. He spent hours awake in his crib, staring at a ceiling painted with frescoes of angels and sun gods, swearing vengeance against every last one of them. "Enjoy your peace while you can," Elian thought as his tiny fingers curled into a powerless fist. "The moment I regain even a fraction of my power, this world will burn. I will turn your floating citadels to dust and bring your gods to their knees." There was a problem, however. His power core, the heart of the void, appeared to be dormant. He tried to meditate, reaching for that dark connection that had always been there, but he found nothing but a wall of silence. Had his reincarnation into a human body sealed away his abilities forever? Doubt was a poison he wasn't used to tasting. At 6 months old, the first incident occurred. A careless nanny had dropped a heavy wooden toy over his crib. The object plummeted straight toward his face. Elian, reacting on pure, ancient survival instinct, didn't cry or close his eyes. Instead, he projected his will at the object. For a split second, the air around the toy distorted, turning black and dense. The toy didn't make impact. It disintegrated into specks of dust before it could touch his nose. The nanny, who had turned around just in time, blinked in confusion, thinking the toy had simply fallen to the floor out of sight. But Elian knew. A toothless, sinister grin spread across his baby face. The power was still there. It was dormant, suffocated by mortal flesh, but it answered to threats. Years passed, and Elian grew, learning to mask his supernatural intellect behind the facade of a quiet, observant child. By the age of 4, he already grasped the geopolitics of this world. It was called Aethelgard, a continent fragmented into floating islands orbiting a massive crystal core known as the Primal Sun. The magic here wasn't arcane. It was resonance, a manipulation of light and sound vibrations. Humans channeled the energy of the Primal Sun to strengthen their bodies, forge weapons, and heal wounds. It was a power system based on harmony and purity, concepts Elian found absolutely revolting. His father, Marcus, was obsessed with training him. A Vane isn't born. He is forged, the man would say, thrusting a wooden sword into his hand that weighed more than Elian himself. The training was brutal. Marcus didn't treat his son like a child, but like a recruit. Blows, falls, bruises. Elian hated every second of it. Not because of the physical pain, which was insignificant compared to the tortures of the netherworld, but because of the sheer audacity of this human daring to strike a god. Yet, Elian learned quickly. His mind, capable of processing galactic warfare tactics, dissected his father's combat styles in seconds. He learned to read weight distribution, muscle tension, and breathing. Although his childish body couldn't keep pace with his mind, Elian managed to block and dodge blows that would have crippled other children his age. He has the instinct of a killer, Elena, Marcus whispered to his wife one night, watching Elian sleep. He doesn't hesitate. He has no fear. Sometimes, when he looks at me during combat, I feel like he isn't looking at his father, but at prey. He's just a child, Marcus. Don't talk nonsense, she replied, though Elian, awake and feigning sleep, detected the tremor of fear in his mother's voice. Good, he thought. Fear is respect. The crucial day arrived when Elian turned 5. In Aethelgard, this marked the age for the rite of resonance. Every child from a noble family was taken to the Temple of Dawn to be exposed to a fragment of the Primal Sun. If the child possessed an affinity for the light, the fragment would glow, revealing their class and magical potential. If not, well, those lacking resonance were branded the dimmed, social pariahs destined to serve or be forgotten. Elian rode in the family carriage, dressed in itchy white silk garments. His father was on edge, repeatedly polishing the hilt of his ceremonial sword. His mother prayed in hushed tones to the Seraphim. Elian stared out the window, studying the capital's towers of crystal and gold, calculating the structural weak points of every building. Today, he told himself, today, I reclaim my throne. When I touch that crystal, the darkness I unleash will be enough to blind their pathetic sun god. The Temple of Dawn was a colossal structure, a dome of glass and light that seared the eyes. Hundreds of families had gathered. Elian saw other children crying or laughing, oblivious to their own insignificance. He spotted an arrogant blonde boy shoving others in line. Make way for the future paladin, the boy shouted. Kalen, he heard someone call him. Elian filed the name away on his mental list of things to destroy later. Finally, his turn came. The high priest, an old man in robes that glowed with their own light, called him to the dais. Elian of House Vane, step forth into the light and let it reveal your truth. Marcus and Elena held their breath in the front row. Elian ascended the marble steps with the dignity of an emperor. Before him, hovering above a pedestal, was the solar fragment, a crystalline rock pulsing with a warm, steady rhythm. It is time, Elian thought. Show them the abyss. He extended his small, pale hand. His fingers grazed the hot surface of the crystal. He closed his eyes and pushed his will forward, reaching for that dark spark within to corrupt the stone, to stain it black and declare his return. He expected an explosion, a burst of shadows, the screams of terror from the crowd. But nothing happened. Elian opened his eyes. The crystal didn't glow. It didn't even flicker. It remained completely inert, like a common rock on the side of the road. The silence in the temple was absolute, heavy as a lead slab. Impossible, the high priest muttered, adjusting his spectacles. There is no resonance. None. It is as if he were empty inside. Murmurs began to erupt like wildfires through the crowd. It dimmed. The great custodian Vane's son is useless. What a disgrace. Marcus Vane stood up, his face shifting from pride to a mask of disbelief, and then to a barely contained fury. Elena covered her mouth, sobbing. Elian stared at his hand, then at the crystal. Had he failed? Had his soul eroded so thoroughly during the passage between death and life that he was left powerless? Humiliation seared his insides. He, the sovereign of the void, reduced to a mere defective human? The priest gently ushered him aside, almost with pity. I'm sorry, son. The light does not dwell within you. Elian was escorted off the dais. Kalen, the blond boy, laughed loudly as he walked by. A Vane without light. You should be a farmer, not a warrior. The ride home was a funeral. No one spoke. Marcus wouldn't even look at him. Upon reaching the manor, his father locked himself in his study. His mother took him to his room and tucked him in without a single word of comfort, her disappointment hanging thick in the air. Elian was left alone in the darkness of his bedroom. The rage had given way to a cold, analytical clarity. He climbed out of bed and walked over to the mirror. He stared at his reflection, a weak, pathetic 5-year-old boy. No, he told himself, I do not fail. The crystal didn't react, because there was nothing for it to react with. He recalled the sensation of touching the stone. It hadn't been a rejection. He had felt hunger, a faint, almost imperceptible suction. He reached out again, focusing not on projecting power, but on that gnawing emptiness in his gut, that black hole he felt at the very core of his being. He stared at the oil lamp burning on his nightstand. He focused on the flame. Come to me, he whispered. The flame wasn't snuffed out by a breeze. It bent. It detached from the wick, hovering in the air like liquid orange fire, and flowed toward his hand. It didn't burn when it touched his skin. It vanished, sucked right into his pores. And for the first time in 5 years, Elian felt a pulse, a thrum of real energy in his veins. It wasn't his own dark energy regenerating. It was the flame's energy, consumed and transmuted into his own. A low, guttural laugh escaped his child's throat. The crystal at the temple hadn't failed to detect his light. It had gone dark because Elian, in that split second of contact, had devoured the resonance trying to enter him. His power wasn't light, nor was it simply the void of old. It had evolved. He was now a predator, a living black hole in human form. They think I am dimmed, Elian murmured, his gray eyes flashing for a moment with a deep violet hue in the dim light. They think I have nothing. Perfect. I'll let them believe that. And while they play with their lanterns, I'm going to eat their sun. He turned toward the window, watching the full moon illuminate the manor gardens. Father, mother, world, you scorn me today. But true darkness isn't the absence of light. True darkness is what feeds upon it. And I am very, very hungry.